Ruthless record company?
I was signed to Ruthless Records with Eazy-E.
Ah, okay. Oh, right. You were going to be a hardcore rapper then. That was where you were heading.
No, he was like, look, I like how creative you are, man. You creative. You know what I mean? All this gangster rap stuff. You don't got to do that. Just do you.
Yeah.
And so he was super liberating to what was the status quo in music, in the hip hop music scene. He was cool with us being as odd and left of center. Yeah, so we were cool.
Well, you keep mentioning ghetto. What does that mean, and what was it like growing up? And obviously we have all these connotations of a ghetto, and it's difficult for young kids, and sometimes they get drawn into stuff. But what's the truth? What's the reality?
So my ghetto was in East Los Angeles.
Was it rough?
It was rough. A lot of gangs.
And what does a gang mean? I mean, what were they doing? What were gangs? You had to join gangs, and
the first thing you have to be worried about growing up in the ghetto, the first thing is the police.
Yeah.
That force, the violent brutality that the police have against young Black, Latino men and then women. And then the second thing is the rival gang in the neighborhood you're from. Like, I have friends that were killed by the rival gang. I have friends that were killed by the police officers. And when I say that, you wouldn't think that's America.
Yeah.
That sounds like a third world country. That the first thing you're afraid of as a teenager growing up is the police.
Yeah.
That sounds like a third world country.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
People don't understand that, right? They don't understand what it's like because you don't get that picture of America.
Then you have the gangs, and the gangs have military weapons. Where are they getting these weapons from? They're getting the weapons from the police officers. And the drugs are coming in. Where are these drugs coming in from? In the 80s, if there was a war on drugs, like, why are there no shortage of drugs? Turns out the drugs will be brought in by federal agents. And all this stuff is documented. Like, before it was like conspiracy. Now it's been documented that these things were actually true. And so we dealt with a lot of that. Crime, corrupted police officers, gangs trying to scratch to survive, kids being killed by kids being killed by cops. That was my growing up. And then the club and hip hop music really gave me a different path.
And how did you get out of that? I mean, is it easy to stay out of it?
It's a choice, and it's a hard choice. And there's a couple of paths. One of the paths is sports. The gangs don't mess with the athlete.
Right.
The other path is music. The gang is like, oh man, yo, Willie, get over here, kick one of them rhymes. Hey, Willie, kick one of those raps, dog.
Yeah.
Or there's the church path.
Right.
Like, they respect the path of because the parent keeps their kid on a straight path.
Right.
So the gang doesn't mess with those three things. They respect those three paths.
Sports, music, and religion.
Anything else, you're either going to get jumped in, or they're going to recruit you to be, in the gang.
Yeah. So we in Asia see this a lot on television. We see people don't understand some of the injustices. Will it ever change? I mean, America is the richest country in the world. It's kind of weird to see this. Kind of even for me now listening to you about it. How does it change? We've had a black president, President Obama, who we both know. And, it's still, when you see the kind of budgets that are thrown in for COVID and recovery, how does America still allow this kind of stuff to happen? And will it ever change in your lifetime, do you think?
America's always been this way. There's always been gangs. They just had different names. So the police, that's a gang. And then there's good police officers. Don't get me wrong. Just like in every ghetto, there's good kids, and then there's the gang. Politics, there's a gang in there. There's always been a mob. There's always been that. There's a gang in everything you think of that does things in a very dark, aggressive way to survive, out of fear, out of greed. There's that mentality is everywhere. Does it have to be that way? To your point, it doesn't have to be that way. But that's just the reality of humanity's fear, greed problems.
You see the number of black kids is the highest in prisons, the amount of crime. But in America, and I mean, it's been, the recent riots, etc., a lot more people are, Black Lives Matter, and there's a lot more. Every time you see, even Apple making a watch strap and people talking about black entrepreneurs and supporting black businesses and stuff. Do you think things are changing and that, for us, it's been amazing that America's had a black president. In our countries where there is different types of racial profiles, it's a long way from happening. And so America has done a lot, but it still seems very backwards in some ways. So I'm looking for answers like, what do you think could be the trigger point to change the whole social economic climate that wealth is more evenly distributed? Because as long as there's economic problems, then kids turn to crime and gangs and all that sort of stuff, right? And if the only way out is music, sports, religion, it's not everyone's going to be a Will.I.AM, and not everyone's going to be the greatest football athlete. How do you think this can change, and why isn't there strong leadership to change it?
Prison, the industrial prison complex, that's business, and that's sad. Because America is one of the only countries where a prison is privatized. You can invest in prisons and profit from people's misfortunes and the way their communities are set up for them to fail. It's a correctional facility, and the first priority is profit. Now that's disgusting. That's a different slavery mechanism. Is that the neighborhood that you grow up in, the education's poor, there's no opportunity, there's no financial literacy to grow capital. As soon as you get money, you cash your check at the check cashing place. There's no nutritional education. So the neighborhood is riddled with poor food that is the result of obesity and diabetes and high blood pressure. It's business. So when you think of a ghetto, it's not poor because somebody's making money. Pharmaceutical industry is making money. The prisons are making money. And they're making money off the misfortunes and the setting up for failure that those communities are designed. And then we have this long-awaited diversity conversation. And that's great that companies are moving to have diversity in their workplace. And then there's the area where we're ignoring, and that is diversity is awesome, but there also should be diversity as far as the Black-owned or Latino-owned huge companies. Not just like diversity in like the white companies, but diversity in economics and business to start with. Yeah. If there's a huge WhatsApp or a huge Facebook or a huge Google or a huge Amazon, where's the Black version? Where's the Latinx version? That's why I love what you do. That's why I love AirAsia. And you come from the music industry. So you show examples of being able to switch disciplines. I salute you because you're an inspiration to me. You're an inspiration to a lot of people of color and what it takes to weather the storm and see success through. So it's people like you to inspire other folks what's possible. It's also preparing for tomorrow. Yeah. Because tomorrow is, if it's weird now and we're barely getting over this racial conversation, which is prehistoric, if you think about how far we've come as a species to be able to communicate through airwaves and have satellites that orbit, triangulate devices with towers, but then we still have like racial problems. We could connect with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and all this other kind of stuff and code algorithms to understand different languages and machines to understand human intent and concepts, but we still have racial problems. Like, are you serious?
I know.
That's crazy to me.
But God, Will, you have really, this last 15 minutes have been really awesome because two things you said, and I want to move on, but there's so much to talk about. But community set up to fail. That's really so appropriate in so many places of the world, not just in the ghettos in America. The community that's set up to fail, you just don't talk about the economics, all the other pieces. I mean, that's so important. And, you've said something so natural and so real in that you're right. We communicate through airwaves. There's artificial intelligence. There's so much. And we still have racial behavior. It is a sad reflection of a human being. All my life in what I've done, we've never looked at race, creed, color, sexual preference. It's purely a meritocracy. And that's what's built what we've built. And it's such a waste of time. And so I do love that bit. You're so right. We communicate now in so many different ways and forms that it's amazing that we still have racism. But anyway, that's it. And let's hope there are more Will.I.Ams and there's more great thought. Hopefully the new president and new leaders. I was really afraid at some stage as we were getting more and more right wing, not just in America, everywhere, and we're becoming more insular and losing this globalized world. And hopefully we're back on track. But there is a hell of a long way to go just listening to you.